At Christmas dinner, my son announced, "You are a burden. We want to live without you." I sat there dumbfounded, looking at the festive table, where the burnt chicken was still smoking. My mistake. These words hit me like a knife, because I had given everything for them: my house, my business, years of my life. But that moment was not the end, but the beginning. They thought they had gotten rid of the burden, but they had no idea what terrible consequences awaited them. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I should have known something was wrong when Haley barely looked up from her phone as I entered the kitchen. Christmas music drifted from the living room. Silent Night, playing softly through the speakers I'd bought them last year. The dining room table gleamed with her grandmother's china, red and gold ornaments catching the light from the chandelier. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. "Need help with anything?" I asked, rolling up my sleeves. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and sage, holiday spices that usually made me feel at home. Today they felt foreign. "Just keep an eye on the chicken," Haley muttered without looking at me. "Timer goes off in 20 minutes. I nodded, grateful for something useful to do. The last few months had been difficult, walking on eggshells, trying to stay out of their way in the house I'd helped them buy. But this was Christmas, family time. Surely things would be different today. The timer's shrill cry jolted me from my thoughts. I'd been watching the snow fall outside, remembering other Christmases when Logan was small, when he'd burst into the kitchen asking if Santa had come yet. When I opened the oven door, black smoke billowed out like a warning. "Oh no! Oh no!" I grabbed the pan, but it was too late. The chicken lay there, blackened and ruined, looking like something from a disaster movie. The smoke detector began its piercing wail. "Kenneth!" Haley's voice cut through the chaos. "What did you do?" "I'm sorry. I fumbled with the smoking pan, trying to salvage something, anything. Maybe we can cut off the burnt parts?" Her face went cold. Not angry, cold. "Great. Just great." Logan appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from curiosity to disgust in seconds. "Seriously? You burned Christmas dinner?" "I can fix this," I said, my voice cracking. "I'll go buy another chicken, or we can order something." "Don't." Logan's voice was flat. "Just don't." We sat at the beautiful table anyway, the charred remains of the chicken like a centerpiece of failure. I kept apologizing, trying to make jokes about my cooking skills, but the silence grew thicker with each passing minute. Haley picked at her mashed potatoes. Logan stared at his plate like it personally offended him. "This burned chicken," Logan said finally, his voice carrying the weight of something much bigger than ruined meat, "is just the last straw." My fork trembled in my hand. "Logan, You've become a burden to us, Kenneth." The words hit me like physical blows. "We want to live without you." The room seemed to tilt. Christmas music still played in the background. Joy to the world. But the words felt like mockery. I looked at Haley, hoping for some sign of disagreement, but she nodded along with his statement. "That's right," she said, her voice steady as ice. "We need our space, our privacy. We're adults, and we shouldn't have to take care of you." Take care of me? I'd sold my business, my house, given them everything so they could have this perfect life. And now I was the burden? "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the cheerful carols. I thought we were family." Logan's laugh was bitter. "Family doesn't mean we have to sacrifice our happiness for yours." I sat there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, watching them eat as if they'd just discussed the weather. The Christmas tree lights twinkled in the next room, all those gifts underneath wrapped in shiny paper and ribbons. I'd bought most of them. The burnt chicken grew cold on my plate as Silent Night played again, the holy words floating through air thick with betrayal. I found myself in my room without remembering how I got there. The house had gone quiet, except for the muffled sounds of dishes clinking downstairs. Logan and Haley were cleaning up, their voices low and casual, as if they hadn't just shattered my world over dinner. On my nightstand sat a framed photo from 3 years ago, Logan's housewarming party. We were all smiling, arms around each other, champagne glasses raised. I looked so proud in that picture, so certain I'd made the right choice. The man in that photo had no idea what was coming. I'd built Watson Construction from nothing. spent 40 years turning it into something substantial. When Logan called that spring day in 2021, voice tight with frustration about housing prices, I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. "Dad, we found the perfect house," he'd said. "But the market's insane. We need 450, and we're short by 200,000. I remember sitting in my office looking at the company logo on the wall. Watson Construction, established 1981. Built to last. Built to provide. I'd called my lawyer that afternoon. "You're sure about this?" Jim had asked, reviewing the sale documents. "This is your life's work, Kenneth." "My son is my life's work," I'd replied. Those first months living with them had been good. Logan would ask my opinion about home improvements, and I'd feel useful again. Haley would invite me to help with grocery shopping, and we'd laugh about Logan's terrible eating habits. I had a purpose, a place. But slowly, things shifted. My suggestions became interruptions. My stories became boring rambles. My presence became inconvenient. "Kenneth, we're having friends over tonight," Haley would say, not quite looking at me. "Maybe you could find something to do." I started eating breakfast at 6 instead of 7 before they came downstairs. I'd take long walks around the neighborhood, killing time until I felt safe to come home. I'd developed a whole routine designed to make myself invisible in the house I'd helped buy. The photo seemed to mock me now. That confident man who'd sold everything to help his son. What would he think of me now, hiding in my room like an unwanted guest? I could hear them talking downstairs, their voices mixing with the sound of running water. Were they discussing me? Planning their next move? Or had they already forgotten about the scene at dinner, moving on with their lives while I sat up here, drowning in memories? I picked up another photo. Logan as a boy, maybe 8 years old, wearing a hard hat at one of my construction sites. He'd been so proud to be there, so excited to help Daddy build houses. Where had that little boy gone? The house creaked around me, settling into the night. I checked the clock. 11:47 p.m. Christmas was officially over. I should try to sleep, hope that tomorrow would bring an apology, some explanation, some way to fix this. But as I lay down, still in my Christmas sweater, I heard something that made my chest tighten. Laughter. Logan and Haley were laughing about something downstairs, their voices light and carefree. The sound drifted up through the floorboards like a knife, cutting through any hope I'd managed to hold on to. They weren't worried about me. They weren't sorry. They were relieved. I woke up with Christmas morning optimism clinging to me like a stubborn dream. Maybe yesterday had been a nightmare brought on by too much wine and holiday stress. Maybe Logan had just been having a bad day and we could talk it through like adults. I made coffee the way I always did, strong, with just a touch of cream. The kitchen felt peaceful in the early morning light, snow still falling outside the window. I set 3 places at the table, arranged the newspaper beside my cup, and tried to pretend my hands weren't shaking. The coffee tasted bitter, but I forced myself to drink it. Normal routine, normal morning. Everything could still be normal. Logan's footsteps on the stairs made my heart race. This was it, the moment he'd apologize, explain that he'd been overwhelmed, that he didn't mean what he said. I arranged my face into what I hoped was a welcoming smile. He appeared in the doorway, hair messy from sleep, wearing the pajamas I'd bought him for Christmas. For a split second, I saw the little boy who used to run to me for protection during thunderstorms. Then his face hardened, and that boy disappeared forever. "Why are you still here?" His voice was flat, matter of fact, like he was asking about the weather. I thought I made myself clear last night. The words hit me like ice water. No good morning, no acknowledgement of the previous night's harshness, just this cold, casual cruelty. "Logan, I struggled to find words. I thought maybe we could talk, work things out. There's nothing to work out." He moved to the coffee maker, deliberately turning his back to me. "I told you how we feel." Haley appeared behind him, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She took one look at the 3-place settings and let out a small, bitter laugh. "Some people really don't take hints, do they?" she said to Logan, as if I wasn't sitting right there. "I guess we need to be more direct." "More direct?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You told me I was a burden and you wanted to live without me. How much more direct can you get?" "Then why are you still here?" Logan's question was delivered with surgical precision. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? I stared at my son, this man I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, and saw a stranger. Because this is supposed to be my home, too. Your home? Haley's voice dripped with disdain. This is our house, Kenneth. We bought it. We pay for it. We live here. I gave you the money. You gave it to us, Logan interrupted. Past tense. It's not yours anymore. The finality in his voice broke something inside me. I'd been clinging to hope, to the possibility of redemption, but looking at their faces, cold, determined, united against me, I finally understood. This wasn't anger. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision they'd made together, carefully and deliberately. I see, I said quietly. I'll pack my things. Neither of them tried to stop me as I walked to my room. My suitcase sat in the closet, dusty from 3 years of disuse. I filled it methodically. Clothes, toiletries, my father's watch, a few photos, my entire life reduced to one bag. At the front door, I paused for one last look at the house I'd helped buy. The living room with its perfect Christmas tree, the dining room where we'd shared so many meals, the kitchen where I'd made coffee every morning for 3 years. None of it was mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. Through the kitchen window, I could see Logan and Haley watching me. They didn't wave. They didn't come to say goodbye. They just watched, waiting for me to leave. I stepped outside into the cold December morning, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The door closed behind me with a soft click, but it sounded like a gunshot. I was homeless. At 62 years old, I was standing on a sidewalk with everything I owned in one suitcase. Nowhere to go. The cold bit through my coat as I stood on the sidewalk, suitcase handle growing slick in my sweating palm. December 26th in Davenport, Iowa, 23 degrees and falling. I needed to move, needed to think, needed to find somewhere warm before my fingers went numb. Hotels were expensive, and I'd need something long-term. Apartment hunting would take weeks, deposits and credit checks and explanations about why a 62-year-old man was suddenly homeless. The magnitude of my situation hit me like a physical weight. Then I remembered Richard Morrison. Richard had been my business partner for 20 years, the steady hand, my ambitious vision. When I sold Watson Construction, he'd bought out my half and kept the business running. We'd stayed friends, but life had pulled us in different directions. When was the last time we'd spoken? September? October? My pride warred with necessity as I pulled out my phone. How do you explain to someone that your own son threw you out on Christmas? How do you make that sound like anything other than pathetic? The phone rang 3 times before his familiar voice answered. Kenneth, Merry Christmas, buddy. How are you? Richard, my voice cracked. I need help. The warmth in his voice shifted to concern instantly. What's wrong? Are you hurt? No, I'm standing outside Logan's house with a suitcase and I don't have anywhere to go. Silence. Then, what happened? They asked me to leave. Yesterday. They said I was a burden and they wanted to live without me. Jesus, Kenneth, are you serious? I wouldn't joke about this. Of course you can stay here. Come over right now. Do you need me to pick you up? No, I'll get a taxi. Thank you, Richard. I'm sorry to... Don't apologize. Just get over here. Sarah's making lunch. The taxi ride through familiar neighborhoods felt surreal. I'd driven these streets for decades, building houses, creating homes for families. Now I was homeless myself, watching the world blur past through salt-stained windows. Richard's house looked exactly the same. Modest brick, colonial, well-maintained but not flashy. He must have been watching for me because the front door opened before I could knock. Kenneth! He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment I felt human again. Come in, you're freezing. Sarah appeared with a mug of hot coffee and a concerned smile. We made up the guest room. It's not much, but it's warm and private. The room was small but perfect. Single bed, dresser, window overlooking their backyard, clean sheets, a reading lamp, a sense of sanctuary I hadn't felt in months. Now, Richard said, sitting on the bed's edge while I unpacked, tell me what really happened. I found myself explaining the whole story. The burned chicken, Logan's cold declaration, Haley's cutting remarks, the morning's final confirmation. Richard's face grew darker with each detail. Your own son, he said quietly, after everything you did for him. I keep thinking I must have done something wrong, I admitted. Maybe I was too involved, too present. Maybe I really was a burden. Bullshit. Richard's voice was firm. You sold your business to help him buy that house. You gave him everything. And now I have nothing. You have this room for as long as you need it. You have friends who care about you. And you have options. More than you think. I sat on the bed, feeling the soft mattress beneath me, looking around at the simple but welcoming space. For the first time since yesterday's dinner, I could breathe without feeling like my chest was being crushed. Through the window, I could see Richard's backyard, the deck we'd built together 15 years ago, the garden where Sarah grew tomatoes every summer. Normal life, continuing on while mine had exploded into pieces. But I was safe now. Temporarily, maybe, but safe. The guest room felt like a sanctuary as I carefully placed each item from my suitcase into the wooden dresser. My father's pocket watch went on the nightstand, its familiar weight in my palm, a comfort I desperately needed. The photos found their place beside it. Logan as a baby, his first day of school, his college graduation. Memories of better times when love flowed both ways. My clothes still carried the scent of Logan's house, that expensive fabric softener Haley insisted on buying. Even now, cast out and forgotten, I was surrounded by reminders of the life I'd lost. My phone buzzed against the dresser top. Autopay alert, $89.99 charge to account ending in 4762. Spectrum Internet Services Logan Watson account. I stared at the screen, reading the notification twice, then 3 times. The amount, the service, Logan's name. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the bed's edge, phone trembling in my hands. They'd thrown me out, called me a burden, made me feel like garbage, but they expected me to keep paying for their comfortable lifestyle? My mind began cataloging the automatic payments I'd set up 3 years ago to help them get established. Spectrum Internet, $89.99. DirecTV Premium, $134.50. ADT Security, $67. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, $45.98 combined. State Farm Home Insurance, $189. Utility Assistance, $125. Nearly $1,800 every month for 3 years. I opened my banking app with fingers that no longer shook. They shook with purpose now. The automatic payments section showed the damning list. 12 different services, all for Logan's address. All draining my account monthly while I lived as an unwanted guest in my own son's home. Independence, I whispered to the empty room. They want independence. I started with the internet. Spectrum's website made cancellation surprisingly easy once you found the right buttons. Reason for canceling? I selected moving and typed, no longer residing at service address. Confirmation email. Your Spectrum Internet service will be disconnected on January 2nd, 2025. Next, DirecTV, the premium package with every sports channel and movie network Haley could want. Cancel. ADT Security, the system that made them feel safe in their perfect home. Cancel. One by one, I systematically dismantled the financial foundation of their comfortable life. Each cancellation felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity, my self-respect, my power. The streaming services, home insurance, utility assistance, confirmation emails flooded my inbox like a digital avalanche of justice. My phone showed the final tally, $1,769.47 in monthly obligations canceled. Effective dates ranging from immediate to 2 weeks out, depending on each company's policies. I sat there holding my phone, surrounded by confirmation emails, feeling something I hadn't experienced since Christmas dinner. Control. Kenneth? Richard's voice called from downstairs. Lunch is ready. I looked at my reflection in the guest room mirror. For the first time in a week, I saw something other than a broken old man. I saw someone who'd just taken the first step toward teaching a very important lesson about appreciation. Richard's dining room felt warm and welcoming, family photos covering the walls, a table that showed the gentle wear of years of shared meals. Martha had prepared tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches, comfort food that made my chest tighten with gratitude. You look different, Richard observed, spooning soup into bowls. More centered, maybe? I made some financial adjustments upstairs, I said carefully. Martha passed me a sandwich. Sometimes taking control of what we can control helps us feel human again. Richard studied my face. Speaking of taking control, you remind me of Tom Bradley. Remember Tom? We worked together on that strip mall project 2 years back. I nodded. Tom had been a decent carpenter, quiet but reliable. Tom went through something similar with his daughter, Richard continued, settling into his chair. He'd helped her buy a condo downtown, moved in to help with expenses. 34 years old, and she treated him like hired help. What happened? I asked, though something in Richard's tone suggested this story had a purpose. Well, Richard's eyes took on a storytelling gleam. Tom was covering $800 a month toward her mortgage, plus groceries, utilities, her car insurance, the whole 9 yards. She and her boyfriend acted like he was this burden who cluttered up their space. Martha shook her head. Some people just don't know what they have. One Tuesday morning, Richard continued, Tom quietly canceled everything. No drama, no announcements, just stopped paying. I leaned forward, and 6 weeks later she was panicking. Mortgage payment bounced, car insurance lapsed. Electricity got cut off for 3 days. She had to pick up a second job at Target, and her boyfriend finally had to find real work instead of his freelance consulting. Did she figure it out? Richard's smile was satisfied. Oh, she figured it out, all right. Came to Tom crying, apologizing, admitting she'd taken him completely for granted. Begged him to come back. And did he? On his terms. Mutual respect. Shared household decisions. Appreciation instead of attitude. Richard took a bite of sandwich. Tom's living there now, happier than he's been in years. My heart was racing. How long did it take before she realized? The mortgage payment was the wake-up call. But Tom said the really eye-opening moment was when her fancy internet got cut off and she couldn't work from home anymore. Martha refilled my soup bowl. Sometimes people need to experience consequences before they can appreciate what they had. Richard was watching me carefully. Kenneth, what exactly did you do upstairs? I found myself actually grinning for the first time since Christmas. I canceled about $1,800 worth of monthly services I was paying for Logan's house. Attaboy! Richard's approval felt like sunshine. How long before things start getting uncomfortable for them? Internet cuts off January 2nd. Security system probably stops working around the same time. The insurance cancellation takes 30 days, but the rest? I calculated quickly. 2 weeks, maybe less. Martha looked concerned. You're not being cruel, are you? I'm being educational, I said. They wanted to live without me. I'm simply honoring their request. Richard stood up, energized. This calls for a strategy session. Want to take a walk? I think better when I'm moving. The afternoon light was already fading as we prepared to head outside, but I felt more alert and purposeful than I had in months. I had a plan now. Better yet, I had proof that my plan could work. One thing Tom told me, Richard said, pulling on his coat, was that patience was key. Let them figure out the problems on their own. Don't explain. Don't warn them. Just let natural consequences do the teaching. I zipped up my jacket, feeling the weight of my phone in my pocket. My phone filled with cancellation confirmations. I can be very patient when I need to be. The cold January air bit at our faces as we walked through Richard's neighborhood, our breath forming small clouds in the frigid evening. This was the kind of working-class area where I'd built dozens of homes during my construction years. Modest houses with careful landscaping, where people took pride in what they had. Tell me about their finances, Richard said as we passed a brick colonial I'd helped to build in 1994. The real numbers. I'd been thinking about this all week. Logan makes $52,000 a year managing logistics for a freight company. Decent job, but nothing spectacular. Haley works part-time at some upscale salon. Maybe $18,000 on a good year, but it's inconsistent. So roughly $70,000 combined, Richard calculated. What are their fixed expenses? Mortgage is $1,950 a month. 2 car payments total about $650. Credit cards, probably $400 minimum payments, knowing Haley's shopping habits. I paused at a corner, looking down the street where 3 of my old houses stood. Without my $1,800 monthly contribution, they're short $800 to $1,000 every month. Richard whistled low. They've been living beyond their means, counting on you to bridge the gap. The thing is, I said as we turned onto Maple Street, I don't think they even realize how much I was covering. Logan probably sees those bills as just getting paid somehow. He never had to think about where the money came from, which means they have no idea what's about to hit them. We walked past a house where I'd installed custom cabinets 20 years ago. Mrs. Chen still lived there, her living room light warm against the winter darkness. Normal people living normal lives, appreciating what they had. Walk me through the timeline, Richard said. Internet cuts off January 2nd. That's next Thursday. 10-day grace period ended yesterday, so they'll wake up disconnected. Security system probably goes dark the same day. Streaming services. I checked my phone. Those end tonight at midnight. How long before they call you? Logan will call as soon as the internet goes down. He works from home Fridays, and he'll panic when he can't log in. I felt a grim satisfaction imagining his confusion. Haley will lose her mind when Netflix stops working. Richard chuckled. And you know all their account information? I set everything up 3 years ago. Account numbers, billing cycles, service providers. I know their digital life better than they do. We'd walked a complete circuit around the neighborhood, past houses that represented decades of my work, my contribution to this community. Each one reminded me that I'd built something worthwhile, that I had value beyond what Logan and Haley chose to see. Kenneth, Richard said as we approached his front porch, what you're doing isn't cruel. You're teaching them the difference between independence and dependence. I keep telling myself that. It's true. They demanded independence while remaining completely dependent on your financial support. That's not independence. That's having your cake and eating it too. The porch light cast a warm glow as we climbed the steps. I felt calmer than I had in months, clearer about my purpose. This wasn't about revenge. It was about education, about consequences, about respect. My phone rang just as Richard reached for the front door. Logan's name appeared on the screen. I looked at Richard, who raised an eyebrow. It's only been a week. Services aren't cut off yet. Maybe he's calling to apologize, I said, though I didn't believe it. Or maybe he's calling because something else went wrong and he needs Daddy to fix it. I stared at the phone, its persistent ringing cutting through the quiet evening. For 3 years I'd answered every call, rushed to solve every problem, provided it for every need. Tonight I let it ring. The voicemail notification appeared moments later. I turned the phone face down and followed Richard inside. That, Richard said with approval, was the right choice. But I could already feel the phone buzzing again. Logan wasn't giving up easily. 1 week later, I sat at Richard's kitchen table with my morning coffee and the Davenport Times, feeling more peaceful than I had in months. The past 7 days had passed quietly. No crisis calls from Logan, no dramatic emergencies requiring my immediate attention, just silence from the house I'd helped buy and the son I'd helped raise. The automatic payment cancellations had all processed. Service disruptions should be starting any day now. At 9:47 a.m., my phone shattered the morning calm. Logan's name on the screen made my pulse quicken, but I kept my voice steady. Hello, Logan. Dad, thank God. His voice was tight with frustration. Our internet's down, completely dead. I called Spectrum, and they're saying something about canceled service, but that's impossible because it's supposed to be automatic payment. I took a slow sip of coffee. I canceled the automatic payment last week. Silence. Then, you what? I'm no longer paying for services at a house where I'm not welcome. You said you wanted to live without me. This is what that looks like. But you can't just... Logan's voice cracked with genuine confusion. I didn't know you were paying for internet. I thought it came out of our account. The innocence in his voice might have been touching if it weren't so revealing. 3 years of automatic payments, and he'd never once questioned where the money came from. You never asked, I said simply. Well, fix it. Call them back and restore the service. I work from home today, and Haley's got clients calling. No. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not paying for your internet anymore. You're adults who wanted independence. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. I could hear Haley's voice in the background, high and agitated. Tell him the security system's not working either. The panel's just flashing red. The security system too? Logan's voice rose an octave. Dad, you can't just leave us without protection. I'm not leaving you without anything. I'm simply no longer providing things you can pay for yourselves. But we don't have money for all this. Do you know how expensive internet is? And security systems? There it was, the truth he'd never allowed himself to face. Then perhaps, I said calmly, you should have thought about that before you decided I was a burden. Haley grabbed the phone. I could hear the handoff, the fumbling, then her sharp voice. Kenneth, this is ridiculous. You can't just cut off essential services. I can, and I have. What else did you cancel? Her voice was getting shriller. What else are you holding hostage? I'm not holding anything hostage, Haley. I've simply stopped paying for services in a home where I don't live anymore. But you have to understand our situation. Logan's salary doesn't cover everything, and my work is seasonal. Then you have a problem to solve. Logan took the phone back. Look, Dad, maybe we can work something out. Maybe if you move back in, we could discuss ground rules. Ground rules? I almost laughed. You mean like the ground rule where I pay all your bills while you treat me like garbage? That's not. We didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said, Logan. You called me a burden. You told me you wanted to live without me. I'm simply honoring your wishes. But we need help. We can't afford all this on our own. That sounds like a personal problem. The line went quiet, except for muffled arguing in the background. I could picture them in their perfect kitchen, in their perfect house, realizing their perfect life was built on a foundation they'd just kicked out from under themselves. Dad? Logan's voice was smaller now, almost pleading. Can't we just forget Christmas happened? Can't we go back to how things were? How things were involved respect and appreciation. When you're ready to offer those, we can talk. I hung up before he could respond. Richard appeared in the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. How'd that go? I smiled, actually smiled. Phase 1 is complete. My phone immediately started ringing again. Logan's name flashed on the screen, insistent and demanding. I turned the phone face down and took another sip of coffee. He'll figure it out eventually. Or he won't, Richard said, settling into the chair across from me. Either way, that's his choice to make. The phone buzzed twice more, then fell silent. In the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the normal sounds of a normal morning, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. I felt respected. 2 weeks later, I was helping Martha plan her grocery list when my phone rang for the 4th time this week. Logan's name flashed on the screen, persistent as always. I'd been ignoring most of his calls, but Richard looked up from his crossword puzzle and nodded toward the phone. Might as well hear what he has to say. Richard suggested, Knowledge is power. I answered on the 5th ring. Hello, Logan. Dad, finally. His voice carried a mixture of relief and frustration. Look, this has gone far enough. Haley's been crying for 3 days straight. You're destroying our anniversary month, and she's talking about postponing our celebration dinner because we can't afford it anymore. Your anniversary is your responsibility to plan and fund. But we can't. Don't you understand? The cable got cut off right in the middle of playoff season. The security system's been down for 2 weeks, and Haley's scared to be home alone. We've got warning notices from the electric company, the water department. I listened to the desperation in his voice, noting how he still framed everything as my problem to solve. None of that changes what you said to me on Christmas, I replied calmly. For God's sake, Dad, that was just... We were stressed. You burned dinner, and we overreacted. Can't you just let it go? Can you unburn that chicken? Can you take back calling me a burden? Logan's voice cracked. Look, maybe we can work something out. Maybe we were too hasty. You could move back in, and we could establish some ground rules. Whose ground rules? Yours or mine? Well, obviously, we'd discuss... it's still our house. Through the kitchen window, I saw a car pulling into Richard's driveway. A familiar car. Logan, I said slowly, are you calling me from outside Richard's house right now? Silence, then the sound of a car door slamming. We just want to talk, Dad, face to face. The doorbell rang. Richard raised an eyebrow and headed toward the front door, but I gestured for him to wait. So you thought you'd ambush me? It's not an ambush. We just need to resolve this before we lose everything. I hung up and walked to the front door, Richard beside me. Through the peephole, I could see Logan and Haley standing on the porch, both looking haggard in the cold February air. I opened the door. Haley immediately started crying. Theatrical, calculated tears that might have worked 3 months ago. Kenneth, please, you're tearing our family apart. Our family was torn apart on Christmas, I said evenly. I'm simply accepting the new reality you created. Logan stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and cold. This is ridiculous, Dad. Stop this vindictive nonsense and help us fix our situation. Vindictive? I felt Richard step closer behind me, a solid presence of support. Logan, you told me I was a burden. You told me you wanted to live without me. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. But we didn't mean financially. We just meant you wanted all the benefits of my support without having to treat me with basic human dignity. Haley's tears intensified. We're going to lose our house. Don't you care about that? I care about the house I helped you buy, but it stopped being my concern when you made it clear I wasn't welcome in it. Richard cleared his throat. Folks, it's 20 degrees out here. If you want to continue this conversation, you're welcome to come inside where it's warm. Logan's jaw tightened. We don't need charity from strangers. Richard isn't a stranger, I said. He's a friend who treats me with respect. You might want to learn from his example. Haley looked between Logan and me, her calculated tears giving way to genuine frustration. What do you want from us? What will it take? An apology would be a start, a real one, acknowledgement of how you treated me, and a commitment to change. Fine, Logan exploded. I'm sorry, okay? Now will you help us? That's not an apology, Logan. That's a transaction. They stood there in the cold, realizing their manipulation tactics weren't working. Logan's entitled anger, Haley's crocodile tears, their attempted ambush, none of it was moving me. This conversation is over, Logan said finally. Come on, Haley. They turned and walked back to their car, Logan's arm around Haley's shoulders in a show of unity that felt rehearsed. As they reached their vehicle, I noticed something white tucked under the windshield wiper, something they hadn't seen yet, a foreclosure notice. I said nothing as they drove away, their crisis accelerating beyond what they even realized yet. Richard closed the door behind us. That went about as expected. Better, I said, watching their taillights disappear down the street. They're running out of options faster than they know. 3 weeks later, I was enjoying my morning coffee in the financial section of the newspaper when an unknown local number appeared on my phone. I'd learned to be cautious. Logan and Haley had started using different phones after I stopped answering Logan's regular number. Kenneth Watson, I answered carefully. Kenneth, thank God. Haley's voice was tight with panic, none of her usual calculated sweetness. It's me. I'm calling from work because we... Take a breath, Haley. What's wrong? Everything's wrong. Her voice cracked with genuine distress. We got the foreclosure papers. Official ones. The bank wants $3,400 in missed payments within 30 days, or they're taking the house. I felt a pang of something, not quite sympathy, but recognition of how serious this had become. I see. And Logan, she took a shuddering breath. Logan lost his job last week. They said he'd become unreliable, argumentative with coworkers. His unemployment barely covers groceries. Now I understood the desperation in her voice. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This was genuine panic. That's unfortunate, I said quietly. Kenneth, please. I know things got said, but we're going to lose everything. Our home, our security, our future. Logan's been applying everywhere, but with that reference from his old job. What exactly are you asking me, Haley? Help us. Save the house. We'll give you the master bedroom. I'll cook your favorite meals every night. You can make all the household decisions, whatever you want. For a moment, I felt the old instinct to rush in and fix everything, but Tom Bradley's story echoed in my mind, along with Richard's wisdom about consequences and respect. Here's what I need, I said slowly. A genuine apology from Logan. Not I'm sorry, or I'm sorry you felt that way. A real acknowledgement of what he said and how he treated me. Okay, yes, he can do that. I need a written agreement about how I'll be treated in that house, as an equal family member, not as a burden or a guest. Yes, absolutely. I need complete financial transparency. I want to see your budget, your debts, your income. If I'm contributing to this household, I have a say in how money gets spent. Silence on the other end. Then, Kenneth, that seems Invasive. Invasive? I almost laughed. Haley, you're asking me to save your house. I think I'm entitled to know where my money would be going. But our privacy? Your privacy was forfeit when you decided to treat me like garbage while expecting me to fund your lifestyle. I could hear her breathing heavily, wrestling with the reality that she couldn't have it both ways anymore. And there would be a probationary period, I continued. I help with this immediate crisis, but future support depends on how you both behave. One more incident like Christmas, and I'm done permanently. Those terms are really controlling, Kenneth. Those terms are respectful, which is more than I got from either of you. But we don't have time for negotiations. The foreclosure deadline is in 4 weeks. Then you'd better start working on that apology. The line went quiet, except for the sound of salon noise in the background. Hair dryers, conversation, normal life continuing while Haley's world crumbled. You know what the neighbors are saying, she said suddenly, her voice bitter. Mrs. Patterson asked why the security company truck hasn't been around. The Hendersons noticed our lawn service stopped coming. Everyone can see Logan's car in the driveway all day because he doesn't have a job to go to. Embarrassing, I agreed. This is our life, Kenneth, our reputation, our standing in the community. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before you destroyed our family relationship. You're really going to let us lose everything over hurt feelings? I'm going to let you experience the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. She hung up without another word. I sat there holding the phone, staring out Richard's kitchen window at the snow-covered yard. A part of me felt sorry for them. I'd never intended for Logan to lose his job, but a larger part recognized this as exactly what they needed, a clear understanding of how the real world works when you don't have someone else covering your mistakes. Richard wandered into the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. That sounded intense. They're about to lose the house, I said. Logan lost his job. Reality is hitting hard. And how do you feel about that? I considered the question honestly. Like a teacher watching students learn a difficult but necessary lesson. Richard smiled and raised his coffee mug in a small salute. Tom Bradley would be proud. 1 week later, I was helping Richard repair a section of fence in his backyard when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Richard and I looked up from our work, and I felt my chest tighten when I saw Logan approaching through the gate. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wearing a wrinkled shirt I recognized from Christmas Day. Dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. This wasn't the arrogant man who'd thrown me out. This was someone who'd been broken down by circumstances he couldn't control. Dad, he said quietly, stopping a few feet away. No demands, no accusations. Just my name, spoken like a question. Richard straightened up, hammer in hand. I'll be inside if you need me, Kenneth. No, Logan said quickly. Stay, please. I want someone to witness this. I set down the fence post I'd been holding. Witness what? Logan's hand shook as he pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. The foreclosure notice. It's final. 21 days to pay or we lose everything. Where's Haley? Gone. His voice cracked. Moved in with her sister 3 days ago. Said she wasn't going to watch our life fall apart because I couldn't fix things with you. I studied my son's face, seeing the exhaustion, the defeat, the first genuine emotion I'd witnessed from him since childhood. Logan, why are you here? Because I need to tell you something I should have said months ago. He took a shuddering breath. I was wrong. Completely. Totally wrong. About what, specifically? About calling you a burden. About treating you like you were in our way. About taking everything you did for us and acting like it was nothing. Richard continued working quietly, his presence providing the witness Logan had requested. Go on, I said. I've been trying to find work for 3 weeks. You know what I learned? Nobody wants to hire someone whose last employer says they became difficult and unreliable. I thought I was so important at that company, but they replaced me in 2 days. Logan sat heavily on Richard's picnic table, looking older than his 35 years. And the bills? Jesus, Dad, I never realized how much you were covering. The house payment alone is more than half my old salary, and then there's insurance, utilities, food, gas, car payments. How did you manage it all? By budgeting carefully and prioritizing what mattered. I never learned to do that. You always just handled things, made problems disappear. He looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. I never appreciated what that meant until it was gone. I leaned against the fence, waiting. Haley said I should just swallow my pride and beg you to come back. But this isn't about pride anymore, Dad. This is about admitting I was a terrible son who treated the most generous man in his life like garbage. The words hung in the cold air between us. Richard had stopped hammering, listening. I called you a burden, Logan continued, his voice getting stronger. But you were never the burden. I was. I was a grown man who let his father pay for his life while treating him like an inconvenience. And now? Now I'm a grown man who's about to lose his house because he was too stupid and entitled to appreciate what he had. I studied Logan's face, looking for signs of manipulation, for the practiced remorse I'd heard in earlier conversations. Instead, I saw something real: shame, regret, and maybe the beginning of genuine understanding. What are you asking me to do, Logan? Help me save the house. Not for me. I know I don't deserve it. But it's your investment, too. You helped buy it, and I threw away your contribution along with your dignity. And in return, I accept your terms, all of them. Financial transparency, respectful treatment, your involvement in household decisions, whatever you require. For how long? However long it takes to prove I've learned something from this disaster. Richard set down his hammer and looked at both of us. Kenneth, this sounds like a young man who's ready to earn back what he lost. I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of it. 90 days, I said finally. A trial period. You demonstrate changed behavior, and I'll help you avoid foreclosure. Logan's relief was visible. What do I need to do first? Show me your complete financial picture. Every debt, every bill, every source of income. Then we'll see if this house is actually salvageable. And after that, you prove you understand the difference between being my son and being someone who deserves my support. Logan nodded, standing up from the picnic table. For the first time in months, he looked me directly in the eye. Thank you, Dad, for not giving up on me completely. Don't thank me yet, I said. Thank me in 90 days if you've actually changed. As Logan walked back to his car, I noticed his shoulders weren't slumped in defeat anymore. They carried the weight of responsibility instead, a burden he was finally ready to bear. 6 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, my master bedroom now, watching Logan and Haley arrange their belongings in the smaller room down the hall. The symbolic reversal felt right, a physical representation of the new dynamics we'd established. Logan had kept his word. Every day for 6 weeks, he'd demonstrated the changed behavior I'd demanded. He found a new job with a medical supply company. Lower pay than his previous position, but his supervisor had already complimented his work ethic and attitude. He showed me every paycheck, every bill, every expenditure. Haley had returned after 2 weeks, swallowing her pride when she realized Logan was serious about meeting my conditions. She still struggled with the new arrangement. I could see it in the way she bit her tongue when she wanted to criticize my decisions, the forced smile when she asked my opinion on household matters. But she complied, understanding that the alternative was losing everything. Dad? Logan appeared in my doorway, holding a stack of mail. Electric bill came in, $67, down from last month, because we're being more careful about usage. Good, I said, taking the bill to review. This was part of our agreement. I saw everything before it got paid, had veto power over any expense over $50. Also, Richard called. He and Martha want to come for dinner Sunday to see how we're settling in. Tell them yes, and ask Haley to make that pot roast they enjoyed last time. Logan nodded. The old Logan would have bristled at being asked to deliver requests to his wife. This Logan understood that respect flowed both ways, and I'd earned the right to have my preferences honored. That evening we sat down for our first relaxed family dinner since before Christmas. The table was set with care, my chair at the head where it belonged, the conversation including my opinions on Logan's work situation and my suggestions for their budget. I've been thinking, Logan said over dessert, about what you said regarding public acknowledgement. I raised an eyebrow. We'd discussed this as part of my conditions, some recognition of what had happened and how it had been resolved. I'd like to have Richard and Martha over next weekend, maybe invite a couple of the neighbors. I want to publicly thank you for your patience and acknowledge how wrong I was about everything. Haley shifted uncomfortably but didn't object. She'd learned that her comfort was no longer the primary consideration in household decisions. That sounds appropriate, I agreed. The following Saturday, Richard and Martha joined us, along with the Hendersons from next door and Mrs. Patterson from across the street. Logan had prepared remarks, but when the moment came, he spoke from the heart. I asked you all here because I need to publicly acknowledge something, he began, standing in our living room with a steadiness I hadn't seen from him in years. 3 months ago, I treated my father terribly. I took his generosity for granted and repaid his sacrifices with cruelty and disrespect. I watched the neighbors' faces, seeing their surprise at Logan's honesty. My father could have written me off completely. Instead, he taught me the most important lesson of my adult life, that respect has to be earned, not demanded, and that appreciation can't be assumed. He looked directly at me. Dad, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for teaching me the difference between being entitled and being grateful. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Richard started clapping, and the others joined in. Mrs. Patterson wiped her eyes with a tissue. After everyone left, I sat in my comfortable chair in the living room, the best chair, positioned where I could see both the television and the front window. Logan and Haley were in the kitchen cleaning up, their voices low and cooperative. The house felt peaceful in a way it never had during my first 3 years here. The difference wasn't just in the changed living arrangements or the financial transparency. It was in the respect that now underpinned every interaction. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Proud of you for teaching that lesson without destroying the relationship. That took real wisdom. I smiled, setting the phone aside. Justice hadn't required revenge. It had required patience, firm boundaries, and the willingness to let natural consequences do their work. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Logan and Haley working together to finish the dishes. Tomorrow, Logan would go to his job, a job he valued because he understood what unemployment meant. Haley would manage the household budget we'd all agreed upon, and I would continue living as a respected member of this family, rather than a convenient benefactor. I picked up my newspaper, settled back in my chair, and allowed myself a moment of deep satisfaction. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to accept being treated poorly. Sometimes justice comes not from punishment, but from insisting on dignity. The house was quiet now, filled with the comfortable sounds of a family that had learned, finally, how to value what they had. And that was worth more than any revenge I could have planned. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.